All right, so today we're diving deep into spiritual initiation. And we've got this amazing interview with Marcelo Martelli to guide us. It's like, getting a personalized roadmap, taking you from wherever you are now to potentially, like, even enlightenment. Who wouldn't want that, right?
That's pretty nuts.
And get this, Martelli suggests there are these specific stages of spiritual development. And figuring out where you are on that path, that's like the first step.
Right, and what's fascinating is he starts with just the everyday person. He calls them the neoite, someone who's just kind of going through the motions, caught up in that daily grind.
Yeah.
You might even recognize yourself in that.
Totally. Like work, bills, trying to keep up with everything. It's so easy to get stuck in that autopilot mode.
Exactly. But then something shifts,
Yeah.
You start feeling this restlessness, this sense that there's got to be more to life than just this.
You start questioning things.
Yeah. Martelli calls this the aspirant phase. That's where you start exploring, maybe dipping your toes into different spiritual practices.
Mm-hmm.
But you haven't really fully committed to anything yet.
It's like that feeling of, is this all there is? Just starts creeping in. So what happens next? How do we move from just kind of dabbling to really diving in?
Well, that's when, the seeking becomes a way of life. It's this deep commitment to self-knowledge. Martelli calls this the disciple stage.
Okay.
And it's not just skimming the surface anymore. You're really digging deep, going beyond just techniques and searching for true understanding.
So it's like moving from the what to the why.
Right, exactly.
But it sounds like it takes a lot of dedication to reach that level.
It does. And, as you go deeper, your connection with your own soul starts to become clearer. Your intuition gets stronger, and you begin to trust those inner nudges more and more.
You start listening to that inner voice.
Yes. Martelli calls this the disciple of light stage. It's like your inner compass is becoming, finely tuned.
Instead of just relying on external guidance, you're starting to listen to that inner wisdom. That's pretty powerful. But where does it all lead? What's the end goal?
Well, eventually you reach a level where you're recognized by your inner master, so to speak. You've shown up, you've done the work, and you're ready for initiation. This is what Martelli calls the accepted disciple.
Okay.
And this is where the real transformation begins.
So we've got this roadmap of stages. But how do we actually, awaken our own consciousness? How do we move from just understanding these concepts to actually experiencing them?
Well, that's where Martelli gets really practical.
Okay.
He gives us 2 keys to unlock our consciousness.
Okay.
The first key is self-observation. But we're not just talking about casually noticing things. It's about becoming deeply aware of your thoughts, your feelings, your words, and even your actions.
I've tried, meditation and mindfulness practices. But sometimes it feels like my thoughts are just racing a million miles a minute. How can I actually become more aware of them?
Well, Martelli has this this really interesting exercise. It helps illustrate the duality of the mind. He asks us to mentally say, "Hola, Marcelo," and then notice both the observer and the observed.
Hold on, there are 2 parts of me here.
Yeah. There's the part of you thinking the phrase, and then there's the part of you that's aware of that thought. This simple exercise helps you start to see the difference between your thinking mind and the awareness that witnesses those thoughts.
Okay, so I'm starting to get it. It's like stepping outside yourself and becoming the observer.
Exactly.
But what's the point of doing that?
Well, by becoming aware of your thoughts, you can start to break free from those automatic patterns, the ones that can keep you feeling stuck. Think about it. How many times have you reacted to something based on just a negative thought that popped into your head?
All the time, especially when I'm stressed.
Exactly. But with self-observation, you can start to catch those thoughts before they take over and make a conscious choice about how you want to respond.
So we're not just victors of our own minds. We actually have the power to choose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to Martelli's second key, awareness of purpose. He really believes in defining a clear dream for yourself and then taking action to make it happen.
This makes me think of visualization, like setting intentions to manifest our desires.
You got it. It's about actively shaping your reality instead of just passively reacting to it. And this is where Martelli introduces this fascinating concept. He calls them futurables, the possible futures that are created by our choices.
It's like we're literally choosing our own adventure in life. Each decision, each action leads us down a different path.
Exactly. And it's not just about reaching some distant goal. It's about enjoying the journey, being present in each moment, and making choices that align with your deepest values and aspirations.
But let's be real, life doesn't always go according to plan, right? What about those times when we face setbacks, challenges, or we just feel stuck? How do we stay on track with our spiritual growth when things get tough?
Well, Martelli acknowledges that the path isn't always easy. In fact, he talks about something called the inertia of the disciple,
Oh, okay.
that tendency to fall back into old patterns,
Yeah.
to lose that hard-earned self-awareness and kind of slip back into autopilot mode.
So it's like hitting the snooze button on our spiritual growth.
You could say that, yeah. We know we should be doing the work, but it's so easy to get distracted. You get caught up in the busyness of life and forget about those deeper aspirations.
So how do we combat that inertia? How do we stay motivated and keep moving forward even when it's tough?
Martelli stresses the importance of those two keys we talked about. Consistent self-observation and having a clear sense of purpose. They act as anchors, keeping us grounded on the path. It's not a one-time thing, it's this continual process. Checking in with yourself, course correcting when needed, and just recommitting to the journey.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about being persistent. Showing up for yourself even when it's difficult, and trusting that every step, no matter how small, is bringing you closer.
Precisely. And along the way, you'll start to notice these amazing synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that feel like the universe is conspiring to help you.
Yeah.
Martelli sees these synchronicities as messages from nature, guiding you in the right direction.
It's like you're in the flow and things are just falling into place. Instead of just reacting to life, we're co-creating it. But I'm curious, what role does love and forgiveness play in all this?
That's a great question. And it's something Martelli really emphasizes. He sees love as more than just a fleeting emotion. He describes it as this state of being, a consciousness, a unity that connects us all.
It's like love is an active force, an energy we can tap into.
Exactly. And forgiveness plays a crucial role in that process. Because as we become more self-aware, we start to see our own flaws more clearly.
Yeah.
And if you can't forgive ourselves and others for past mistakes, we can easily get stuck in patterns of guilt and shame.
So forgiveness is like this key that unlocks the door to deeper love and compassion.
It is. It is. And it's not always easy. It takes practice. It requires a willingness to let go of old hurts and grievances.
I can definitely relate to that. Sometimes it feels easier to hold on to the anger,
I understand. But Martelli reminds us that forgiveness isn't about condoning bad behavior. It's about freeing ourselves from that negative energy that's keeping us trapped in the past. It's about choosing to see ourselves and others with compassion, recognizing that we're all doing the best we can.
So it's about shifting our perspective, choosing love over fear, and ultimately creating a more peaceful experience for ourselves and everyone around us. This is all so profound. But I'm wondering, how do these concepts of love and forgiveness relate back to those stages of spiritual development?
That's a great question. And I think it's something we'll explore more deeply in the next part of our deep dive. But for now, I'll just say that as we progress through those stages of discipleship and initiation, our understanding of love and forgiveness, it deepens and expands. It moves from being a more intellectual concept to an embodied experience.
It becomes a way of being in the world.
Exactly.
This is already a lot to digest, and I'm sure our listener is eager to hear more about the actual initiations.
Yes, and we'll dive into those in the next part. But before we move on, what's standing out to you so far? What resonates most deeply with your own experience?
For me, the idea of futurables really struck a chord. It's empowering to think that we have the power to shape our own future through our choices, even if we don't always have control over the circumstances.
That's a powerful insight. And it reminds us that even though we may start as neoites, caught up in the routines of life, we all have the potential to become conscious creators of our own reality. And that's really what this journey of spiritual initiation is all about. So take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed so far. Where do you see yourself on this path? What questions are bubbling up inside you? When we return, we'll delve into the mysteries of initiation and its transformative power.
Welcome back to our deep dive into spiritual initiation with Marcelo Martelli.
Yeah, we left off talking about those two keys. Self-observation and awareness of purpose, and how important they are, for navigating those challenges on the path.
Right, and all the synchronicities you were talking about, like getting those little winks from the universe along the way. But let's get to the heart of this deep dive, those initiations. You mentioned that Martelli sees the third initiation, the transfiguration, as like the real deal. What makes this one so special?
Well, think about the word transfiguration for a second. It implies a complete change, like a metamorphosis. Martelli describes it as stepping out of the shadows of your own mind and into the full light of your true self.
Okay, I like that. It's like shedding an old skin, right? Stepping into a whole new level of awareness.
Exactly. It's about transcending the limits of your thinking mind, not getting rid of thought altogether, but understanding it. You're connecting to something much larger than yourself, something Markelli called the divine source.
So it's not about becoming an emotionless robot. It's about realizing that our thoughts create our reality.
Yes, and realizing you have the power to choose your thoughts.
Yeah.
Rather than being ruled by them, you go from just reacting to life to actively creating it. This is where free will comes in.
Yeah. It's like we're not just products of our past or our circumstances. We can actually choose a different path.
Exactly.
That's powerful, but how do we even begin to access that kind of awareness?
Well, Martelli uses this image from the Bible. The story of Jesus' transfiguration on the mountain. Jesus takes his disciples up this mountain, and he's transfigured right before them, radiating light.
Yeah, I remember that story. But what's interesting is that the disciples were asleep during this whole thing. What's the meaning behind that?
Well, it's like saying this level of consciousness. It's beyond the grasp of the ordinary mind. You can't just think your way into it. It requires a transformation, letting go of the ego and its limitations.
So it's not about willpower.
No, it's about surrender, letting go, allowing something greater to work through us.
Okay.
And this is where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Because the ego, that part of us that wants to be in control, is going to fight this process.
Of course.
The merging of the human and the divine, a recognition that we are already one with the source, but our ego keeps telling us we're separate, limited.
No wonder the disciples were asleep.
Right.
It's like trying to grasp something completely beyond our understanding.
And that's what makes the third initiation so profound. It's a total game changer. You realize that you're not your thoughts, you're the awareness behind them. It's a level of freedom most people don't even realize is possible.
I'm starting to understand why this initiation is such a big deal. But what about the fourth initiation? You mentioned Martelli compares it to the crucifixion. That seems a bit intense, even paradoxical.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How can the most painful experience of Jesus' life represent liberation? But think about what the crucifixion symbolizes. The death of the ego, the liberation of the soul. It's that final surrender, the end of the illusion that we're separate from the divine.
So it's not about physical death, but about the death of the ego, that part of us that clings to separateness.
Exactly. And Martelli explains that this is the moment when Christ consciousness was released, made available to all humanity.
Okay.
It's like this cosmic event.
Yeah.
Where the resonance of that sacrifice awakened a divine spark within every human being.
So it's not about worshiping a figure from the past, but recognizing that potential for enlightenment within ourselves.
It is, and Martelli is clear that this Christ consciousness, it isn't limited to any one religion or belief system. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness, our oneness with all of creation. It's a spiritual inheritance available to everyone.
But it's not something that just happens automatically, right?
Absolutely not. It takes work,
Yeah.
commitment, cultivating those qualities of love, forgiveness, self-awareness.
Right.
It's a process of surrendering to something greater than ourselves, allowing that divine spark within us to ignite.
This is heavy stuff, but it's starting to make sense to me. It's like each stage builds on the one before it, leading us toward that ultimate liberation represented by the fourth initiation, that realization that we are not separate. We are all connected to this divine source.
Yes, and I think this is where the concept of reincarnation starts to make more sense. Martelli differentiates between return, which is reincarnation, and liberation. Reincarnation is seen as necessary for the soul to evolve, like going to school, learning lessons, growing through multiple lifetimes.
And liberation is like graduating, transcending the cycle of birth and death altogether.
Exactly. You've learned the lessons, fulfilled your purpose, achieved a sense of completion. You no longer need to repeat the cycle.
And he suggests that the fourth initiation can lead to that liberation.
Yes.
That's incredibly profound. But it also raises some questions for me, like if the soul no longer needs to reincarnate, what happens to it?
Those are big questions. And to be honest, Martelli doesn't give a definitive answer. He leaves it open for us to explore, to discover our own truth. Perhaps that's the ultimate test, the final initiation, trusting in the mystery, letting go of our need for certainty.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Letting go of control and trusting in something I can't fully grasp. It's scary, but also exciting.
I think that's the beauty of this whole journey. The willingness to embrace the unknown, to step outside our comfort zones, and just keep expanding our awareness.
It's like we're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible, both for ourselves and for humanity as a whole. But I'm curious, how do we actually live this out in our daily lives? It's one thing to talk about these concepts, but how do we bring them down to earth?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. Because as inspiring as these initiations are, they're not just about having these extraordinary experiences. It's about embodying these principles in how we live, the choices we make, the way we interact with the world, even in the mundane parts of life. So take a moment to reflect on what we've discussed. Consider this. How might these initiations be showing up in your own life, even in subtle ways? What areas might you be ready to transfigure or crucify to experience a deeper level of freedom? We'll be back soon to explore some practical tools to help you answer those questions.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into spiritual initiation.
We've covered a lot of ground, from those stages of discipleship to those transformative experiences Martelli calls initiations.
Right, we even talked about that idea of liberation from reincarnation, like the ultimate graduation.
Exactly. But now let's bring it all down to earth. How can we actually live out these concepts in our daily lives?
Yeah, because true initiation, it's not just about having these mystical experiences
Yeah.
or just accumulating spiritual knowledge.
Right. It's about integrating those principles into like the fabric of our being, how we live, the choices we make, how we interact with the world.
So how do we actually do that? Where do we even begin?
Well, Martelli points to two really powerful areas where our spiritual growth, or lack thereof, becomes really evident. Our relationship with money and our relationship with sexuality.
Okay.
These are areas where the ego tends to have a really strong hold.
It's easy to see how money can be a trigger for so many fears.
Oh, absolutely.
Like scarcity, survival, our need for security and
Quite
control.
rightly, exactly. And sexuality, with all its primal urges and desires, it can operate beneath the surface of our awareness, leading to more unconscious reactions rather than conscious choices.
So how do we move from that unconscious reactivity to a more conscious way of being?
Well, this is where Martelli's concept of mastery comes in. And it's not about denying these aspects of ourselves. It's about transforming our relationship with money and sexuality so they become expressions of our higher purpose, not roadblocks on the path to liberation.
I like that. I like that. So what might that transformation look like in practical terms?
Well, when it comes to money, it's about shifting from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance.
Okay.
Recognizing that, we're supported by the universe. We have everything we need,
We have what we need.
and our needs will be met.
So instead of being afraid and clinging to what we have, we can approach our finances with more generosity, a willingness to share, like trusting that the more we give, the more we'll receive.
Exactly. And with sexuality, it's about approaching it with reverence and awareness, recognizing its power as this creative force and choosing to express it in ways that align with our values.
So instead of just trying to satisfy our desires, we can treat sexuality as this sacred energy that can fuel our connection with ourselves and with others.
Beautifully said. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we express this energy. And that choice can either move us closer to or further away from our spiritual goals.
But let's be real, this is a journey, not a destination, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to mess up, we're going to fall back into old patterns.
Of course.
And that's where self-compassion comes in.
Exactly.
Recognizing that we're all works in progress,
Yeah.
Every moment is a chance to learn and grow.
Yeah, it's about continually fine-tuning that internal compass, making those adjustments and trusting that we're moving in the right direction, even when it feels like we're taking a few steps back.
It's like trusting the process. But there's something else Martelli talks about that I wanted to mention, the importance of service.
Yes, such a crucial part of this journey. He believes that as we go through those stages of initiation, we naturally want to give back, share our gifts with the world.
It's like recognizing we're all connected. Our actions have this ripple effect that can create positive change.
Exactly. And it's not about seeking recognition. It's about the joy of giving, contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
And it doesn't have to be these grand gestures. It can be simple acts of kindness, offering a helping hand, listening with compassion, even just holding space for someone.
Absolutely. It's about bringing that awareness of interconnectedness and love into everything we do.
This has been such a rich and thought-provoking conversation, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have, but hopefully we've given our listeners some valuable insights to continue their own exploration,
Yeah.
This path is deeply personal. It's about listening to your own inner wisdom, trusting your intuition, following your own unique path.
And one of the most powerful questions Martelli asks is, what does this all mean to you?
Exactly.
What feels true for you? And what actions feel aligned with your soul's purpose?
We've explored some really profound concepts and tools today, but ultimately this journey of initiation is yours to create.
Trust your inner guidance. Embrace the unknown. And know that you have everything you need to awaken to your full potential. Until next time, keep shining your light brightly.